if you want us to be in the workforce, you really need to make more supervisors available and just things like that. So, but I want to just say that, they do provide paid supervision, but unfortunately LMFT seems to be grossly underrepresented in the state of Minnesota for some reason. I don't know why. Which is very unfortunate for people like me who are still struggling to this day, from graduation of 2015 to try to get their license because of supervision.
That's so disheartening, Here you've been through so much schooling, so much practice, you have so much clinical skill and prowess, I'm sure. And to not be able to, to get over that finish line, because that means so much, right? To be independently, fully licensed, that means so much for you and your clinical practice and career. And, I can only imagine how many people are in that exact position or like struggling, like I was mentioning, to scrape together the money to pay for their own supervision and get those hours documented. We really don't have to look very far, right, to see why the workforce shortages are so profound.
Right. Agreed.
And you really start thinking about like deeper meanings about how we're not necessarily taken care of. And I just feel like, and again, I don't want to get too political, but I feel like the politicians are saying like two different things, how they value mental health, but again, they're not willing to really put a lot of money or time or effort into it. And it really makes me worried about like the future clinicians. If we're having so much problems now, what's going to happen in 10, 15 years,
Right.
Yeah, it's a scary thing to think about, right? Because there is a huge percentage, I don't know if it's half, but like if you think about all of the outpatient mental health providers in the entire country, what percentage of those are in private practice or would prefer, ideally to be in private practice? It might be upwards of half, right? Because I know that there's half of all clinicians roughly who don't accept insurance. They just don't work with insurance. So, that's kind of a unique, I think, outlier in the mental health profession. That's probably not as profound on the medical side, right? A lot of medical professionals are part of a hospital system, or they're maybe in smaller practices that are attached to a hospital system. The mental health world is not quite like that. It's a different landscape in terms of how many people are in private practice. And what we see, to your point about politicians and legislation, is that there is no legislation being passed that's supportive of mental health practitioners in private practice, right? We're seeing a lot of legislation being passed that supports big hospital systems and how those folks are reimbursed. Like, I don't know if you guys saw, but like Medicare is able to continue their telehealth billing and services, but only in regards to the hospital systems. Only hospital systems are allowed to continue billing Medicare telehealth once the pandemic status is over or whatever. So it's things like that really are kind of stacking the odds, I think, against folks who want to be thriving in private practice and hanging their shingle out like you, Rebecca, doing their own thing. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to be in private practice and see a clientele that we want to, or be able to, see folks who are on Medicaid, those lower income populations, have kind of a mixed variety. Those are the types of things that offer balance, right? To our professional world. And I just, the further we go here, the less I see that being supportive. So it's concerning. It's concerning about how that's going to go in the future state, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, unfortunately, the practice that I'm a part of is a group practice. So I have a clinical director, and then it's very small. It's just me, one other therapist, and a clinical director. And the clinical director, is fully licensed. And so both me and the other therapist are pre-licensed. So we go through our clinical director for licensure. So obviously we don't make as much money as if we were independently licensed. And then when we do get to that point, we will make more, obviously. But for the time being, that's kind of like how we are able to, get the experience of being in a practice and, get the experience of working with insurance, things like that. But I think that a lot of people who are off on their own completely, my aunt, she's also a therapist. She's off on her own completely. And she's also gotten to the route of taking private pay only because just insurance is just not working for her. And so I feel like maybe potentially the future of new clinicians coming in who are like newly licensed or they're pre-licensed can join a very small practice instead of being completely on their own. Like, for example, like I just said, like clinical director, one or two other therapists, because it seems to be enough to provide support for each other, but then also we don't have to, we can still bill insurance through our clinical director.
Mm-hmm. That was where I was happiest too. When I was in private practice, I worked with two wonderful psychologists, and it was just the three of us, and we did awesome work, and we had a great pace. And we had a very sort of specific niche where we dealt with a lot of neurodivergent kids and their families. And it was awesome. But oftentimes when you're in a small group practice like that, is a really low margin for profit, right? There's not a lot of room for error. They got to take a decent chunk from your hourly wage to pay the overhead costs. And so that can still, be a grind. What I think maybe future new therapists